Our men, his story. Our transformation, his glory. This is Disciple. Welcome to the Brotherhood.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Disciple Podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Dibler. At Disciple, we're equipping men of God to walk boldly in the light and truth of God's Word so that they can lead lives of ministry and mission and honor the call of the Great Commission. Welcome back, everyone, to the Disciple Podcast. It's been a fun ride to this point. We've had so many great guests on this show, and we've got another phenomenal one tonight. Adam Sayler. It is Sayler, correct? I don't think I ever actually asked you how you pronounce your last name. It is Sayler. Okay.
Yep. Welcome
to the podcast, Adam. Adam, say hello.
Hey, everybody.
So, guys, this is pretty cool. I'm recording with someone who's in Alaska, which I just think is so kind of unique, right? Like, Adam and I met each other through the LinkedIn community, and then he became a part of Discipled, and he's been an active member of our community for months, but it's a little tricky at times for Adam to join our Friday morning fellowship calls, although he was there last week, because it's super early in the morning. He's got to get up, 4:30 a.m. to make a 5 a.m. call with the guys from Discipled. So we appreciate you, brother. And even when you're not on the Friday morning calls, you're always active in our community chat via Discord. So we love you, man. And it's just, it's a blessing to be able to sit here with you and actually spend a couple hours like getting your complete testimony. I can't wait.
Yeah, so this is good because I'm finally able to prove I'm not like the abominable snowman. I'm an actual human instead of just a chatbot or something on Discord.
I've seen some video content from you, I think, on LinkedIn. So we knew you were a real person, and I'm just in the conversation that you and I had leading up to this point. I feel honored, that I get to be the host on this platform, number one, but then to be able to be kind of the first to capture your full testimony. Like, this is going to be really cool. And I can't wait to learn more about your journey, because you've shared a bit with me that has been really, intriguing and powerful. And I just can't wait to unpack it and share it with our listeners. I think it's going to be really cool, man. So welcome, and let's get into it, right?
Yeah, so this, it's just a really cool opportunity. I think it's really the first time I've been able to I guess, share with people. It is, we have this saying, kind of within our group, but God, it's like,
that's right.
And I just really feel like my life has been just this nonstop sequence of events and miracles, and just ways that God, works things out that you can't explain.
That's right. Absolutely.
There's no way to explain it other than Him, and to give Him all the glory through it. So,
hallelujah.
I mean, it's an opportunity, but some of it's probably going to be kind of difficult. There's a lot of stuff to unpack, but as we agreed and talked, and we're going to let the Holy Spirit lead the way.
That's right. We're going to let God steer the ship. He's going to take us down the path that He desires this. And, He's going to reach the people He needs to reach through it. But God, is probably going to be the most resounding theme through all of this, because you have led a life of miracles. And, we like to start at the beginning of the story. Your life, your earliest memory really is miraculous, right? So why don't you walk us back and tell us a little bit about that experience, and then how life evolves from that moment for you?
Yeah, so I was born in a small town in the Midwest, South Central Kansas, called St. John. Mm-hmm. People from the Midwest would know Kansas by probably Kansas City or Wichita or something like that.
Yeah.
So but it's other than Alaska, I guess. It's God's country. It's just out, surrounded by nothing but farmland, flat. I was born in 1982.
And that's my year too, brother. That's a good year.
Great year.
That's a great year.
But yeah, going back to my earliest memory, like we just lived in a single wide trailer on back of the property. And, my memory is sitting in our family vehicle, basically watching the trailer burn.
Wow.
And that was after my mom had woken me and my brother up. I got an older brother that's 4 years older than me. We were on one end of the trailer in the bedroom. She was on the other. And I just remember her saying, I have no idea what woke me up. But she grabbed me. She couldn't get my brother up. She ended up having to like kick his bed and just shake his bed to get him to wake up.
Wow.
So we had some neighbors. We lived kind of back, I guess you would call it an alley. It was like a long driveway.
Yeah.
So she basically, the only thing she had to do, she's barefoot. Really the only thing she had to do was to keep us safe, was to get us in the car and then run down the long driveway to the neighbor's house to call 911 for the fire department. So, anybody who's familiar with the single wide trailer, it doesn't take long for one of those to go up. So it was, it was a total loss.
That's what I was going to ask. You lost everything, right? I mean,
yeah. My dad wasn't in town at the time. He was out of town working, so it's just my mom and me and my brother and I. So, and it's weird. A lot of people say, at 3 years old, kids don't remember that kind of stuff, but trauma has a way of impacting us and sticking with us. It's not something I necessarily have a bad memory about. It's just that sticks within me, that, actually seeing that event happen and take place. So,
do they know what started the fire? Was it something in the kitchen or cause
electrical? So if I remember right, it started on, I guess the electrical mast or whatever, where the service actually goes into the house. It was something to do with that.
Crazy. So God spared your life there at 3 years old and gave you a pretty profound memory to carry with you for the rest of your life. So, wow.
Yeah, and then after that, wasn't long after my parents divorced when I was really young. So really, I don't necessarily know exactly how all that played out. They were married for quite a while before. For whatever reason, they got divorced, and I ended up with my dad. It was in that era, I guess it was very uncommon for kids to be the dad instead of the mom.
Sure.
Yeah, I ended up with my dad, and really I lived full custody with my dad all the way until I graduated high school and moved out of the house.
Wow. Was your dad a man of God? I mean, did you come into, because I'm assuming, based upon what I know about your story, that you probably found the faith, later in life, but I don't know, that could be wrong. Was there any kind of foundation from that perspective established when you were young?
So there was. So both of my grandparents were very, very strong. Both leaders within their respective churches. My dad grew up as a, going to church. My mom did as well. They both went away from that for quite a long time.
Yeah.
But I had that influence from my grandparents, but I also had that influence from my dad. My dad really struggled with addiction, with alcohol and drugs.
Okay.
And so it was kind of on again, off again. It was when the times were good and the time was right. We went to church. I grew up going to church, if not consistent with my dad, with my parents on his side. Every time we went to my grandparents in McPherson, Kansas, it was centered around church because it was typically the holidays and that kind of thing. So
yeah, sure.
anytime I was with them, I was in church. But I don't ever remember not knowing God. I don't ever remember not having that deep sense within me that I knew God and I knew He was real. And I've never really I've never been one that's really questioned my faith.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's because it was always there.
Yeah.
I've never struggled with that. I guess I feel very blessed and fortunate.
Yeah, praise the Lord, because a lot of us, I didn't have that foundation.
There's been a lot of hard stuff. There's been a lot of times that I guess would maybe be an excuse or a reason. Question that, but it's just something I feel very blessed. I've never had to struggle with.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. It really is. So your father in his struggles with addiction, was it a difficult home for you to grow up in? Or was it just like, were his struggles kind of isolated to him, or did they impact you and your brother as well? Like, what was that like growing up as a kid?
So it was, again, it was kind of that on again, off again kind of thing. my dad was definitely the guy that always told us he loved us. You know, anytime we parted ways, going to school, going to work, whatever, it was always a kiss and a hug and I love you. But at the same time, there was those demons, you know, that were there. I do remember, like in my bedroom, I had only people as old as you and I are probably older are going to know what Tupperware is, right?
Yeah.
There was like this Tupperware platter that sat on top of a bookshelf that I kept like trinkets and stuff on. But I remember what he would do is that is what he would use to cut his raw marijuana on. And so he would take that out of my room. He'd be sitting in his easy chair, you know, processing his raw marijuana, smoke or whatever.
Yeah.
He'd get done doing that. I remember he always kept it in black film canisters.
Okay.
You know, people that have been around, that kind of stuff.
I remember that. Yeah.
Remember that. But then he would put it back in my room. And I always wondered, I'm like, all right, this is why is it this way? You know, and of course now looking back, I know, okay, well, that was a very convenient way for that not to be obvious what that was for. Yeah. You know, and so with the alcohol and with that, it was always there. And my dad was married 6 times. So it was a pretty tumultuous home life with that. And unfortunately, my dad grew up in a household that was although my grandparents were people of faith, they went to church, it was also very manipulative. Which trickled down, you know, to me and my brother as well. So it was very much one of those things like, you know, we'd be sitting there watching TV tonight and be like, hey, go run to the fridge and grab me a beer. And if I questioned it, it was like, you know, I've had a hard day, you know, I want to relax and that kind of stuff. So there was always a lot of that manipulation that was a little frustrating. You know, I did like I shared with you before, you know, ultimately ended up to our house being raided by the gang.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, so did he kind of get in, was he dealing at that point? Like,
I don't know so much if it was dealing or if he was caught up in the grand scheme of whatever they had going on.
Yeah, bigger sting kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember waking up, I heard somebody banging on the back door. And I heard somebody say, Mike, are you here? Which my dad's name was Mike. And then, you know, I just hear footsteps everywhere. Of course, I'm like, what in the world is going on? Because it wasn't common for people to be at our house.
Right. In the middle.
After we went to bed.
Yeah.
So then next thing I know, you know, my light comes on and there's a agent in my room with a shotgun.
Oh, my goodness. That's terrifying. How old were you when this happened?
Probably, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old, probably somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So, you know, and that was difficult. I remember they took us out of the house and, you know, some of my other family and stuff was there. And so, you know, long story short, they go through that process. We're back at home with him at a later time. I don't remember if this was like days later, weeks later, whatever it was. And he just, you know, I remember him sitting down with me and my brother and just telling us, say, you know, the cops came, they said, they were, you know, he's like, they told me that if I didn't tell them everything that's going on, they were going to take you boys away from me. So I told them everything that was going on. And the people I'm associated with didn't like it. And they are they're threatening me. And he said, just know if I disappear, they've taken me out to the woods somewhere. They told me they're going to cut my Achilles tendons and just tell me to, you know, either hope that I can crawl back or, you know, I'll die out there.
Oh my goodness.
So, you know, I always remember being kind of paranoid, you know, everywhere he was always watching over his shoulder. Or
that would make you a little paranoid. I mean, they plant that seed.
Yeah. And there wasn't a person that ever walked into like if we were at a restaurant eating or a room, there was not a person that walked in that place that he didn't make eye contact with. You know, just kind of that paranoid thing. But I remember after that, like, you know, seeing shotguns behind doors of the house and him answering the door, you know, with a shotgun. You know, there was a good long time there that I remember it was, you know, very apparent that something had happened that had really put the fear of God in him, for lack of better words.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, was that paranoia, was it affecting you as well?
I think just to the point that I knew it was there.
Yeah.
You know, he was, like I said, other than like seeing like I talk about him processing the marijuana and stuff like that. I don't ever recall him doing drugs around me. He drank beer every night, but I don't ever really recall him getting heavily intoxicated. He wasn't violent when he was drinking, anything like that. I mean, he was physical at other times and could be. As far as the paranoia affected me, a lot of the people he was associated with, their kids were my friends as well.
Yeah.
And that was one of the weird, I don't say weird, I guess one of the great things that them as all parents did, whatever they had going on behind the scenes and stuff, I don't ever recall it affecting us kids because we stayed friends. Some of them I'm still friends with to this day. So
yeah. So I don't know. It's just amazing as you like tell this story, because a lot of people that, had experienced a little bit of chaos in their home, like they were affected by it, and it was really starting to like impact their identity and the direction that they were moving in life. And it's like, I see in you it's, I think, a picture of what you revealed at the beginning, like that I don't really ever remember not knowing God or even questioning my faith. You just seem so cool and collected through all of this. I'm like, waiting. Was there a point where it like really did challenge you or break you in some respect, or steer you down the path where you were questioning something about your faith, or is God really real, or why are these bad things happening, or things of that nature? Because you seem to, like, at this stage of the story, I'm seeing it as though, man, God is just this like steady, calming presence in your life.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. But what it did do is it turned me into, like, I don't know how to describe it. It turned me into a very stoic kid, individual, and person, to where I went through a really, really long period of my life where you did not know what I was thinking. I didn't show emotion. I think the first time I had actually cried, probably since, obviously as a kid you get hurt, you cry.
Yeah.
But based on emotions was really when I married my wife, almost 10 years ago now.
Wow.
So, 31 years old was the first time anybody in my family had seen me cry since I had been a kid. And that's what it did. I just got to the point where I kind of, I don't want to say shut down, but it was like, you know what, I'm in survival mode, and I've seen some stuff, and we can cover some of the other stuff later with the diagnosis of Fabry disease.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah.
I can cover that now. So that plays a role in it too, because
you had when was, so you got diagnosed with a kidney disease, and that, how old were you when that was discovered?
I gotta go back a little further before that, because Fabry is a genetic kidney disease. It's what they call a lysosomal storage disorder. So essentially, my body doesn't get rid of dead cells and things like that, like it should, and it manifests in different ways in different people. But one of the big things is I don't sweat. I have a pretty high intolerance to heat and cold. And then there's a lot of neuropathy that goes with it. So as a young kid, I remember if I would get involved in heavy physical activity, or especially when it was hot out, growing up in the Midwest, the summers are hot. Yeah. My hands and feet would just burn like crazy. And, I'd tell my parents, and they'd be like, well, of course, it's 105 degrees outside. You need to go get in the shade, cool off, or whatever. So I would take a break and relax a little bit, cool off, and it would kind of subside. But then I remember asking other kids I'd be playing with, once I started playing like T-ball and stuff like that, I'd be like, man, do your hands and feet burn like when it's hot out? Or no, they're like, well, yeah, if I'm walking around, on the pavement with my shoes off. But,
right.
So what that was that neuropathy, or people could, you could relate it to like diabetic nerve pain.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Nerves just crazy overfiring and causing a lot of pain. So, the actual formal diagnosis, I ended up having to get another formal diagnosis as an adult. But it was actually diagnosed by an eye doctor when I was probably around 9, 10 years old, somewhere around there. So in a Fabry patient, when an eye doctor doesn't examine the eyes, when they look back into your eye, it looks like a starburst.
Is that like an optic nerve kind of thing? Like, is that something that triggers like yeah?
I'm not quite sure on that part of it. I just know, and again, it goes back to but God. The eye doctor I had when he did my eye exam, he just happened to have done his, I don't know if you call it thesis or graduate paper, optometry school on Fabry disease.
Get out of here. Wow. So he was like the perfect guy to take a look.
Yeah. So he sees it and he's like, oh my goodness. He's like, I've only seen this in research. I've never seen it in real life.
That's not a coincidence. That's an only God thing.
The thing was, it ended up leading to the diagnosis to my grandpa, to my mom, a bunch of my family members.
Is that right?
Because it's one of those chromosomal disorders. So like, a male can only pass it to a female, but a female can pass it, or I don't remember exactly how it all works. Anyway, it's however all that goes. So
yeah.
But like I have 3 daughters, and they automatically have it. Like there's no getting out. So male is always going to pass it to the daughter, and stuff like that. So, but anyway, and so going back to the whole stoic kind of thing, I've just kind of unfortunately had a life where I've experienced physical pain more than not.
Yeah, I mean, if you're conditioned to like live in that pain state for your entire life from the time that you're a kid, it's like kind of puts you in that mindset of you just toughen up, right? And don't show weakness, hold it all together, because you've had to live that way, right? You had to kind of grind through it.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it's been. And so, and now today, like it's funny. I have older teenage daughters, and down to babies, and I've always been, everybody. I guess that guy that everybody's like, hey, is everything good? You always look mad. My daughter's friends are like, your dad's scary. I mean, I'm not a small guy. I'm 6 foot tall. I'm not. I mean, I'm thin as a rail, but everybody's like, oh yeah, that's your dad's that tall, scary guy. Like, come on, guys, I'm really not. But it's just kind of, that I think it's just essentially what it is. It's compounding trauma. It really is.
Yeah.
It gets to that point where, again, you're just kind of constantly in survival mode, and you just set your foot down and you move forward. But again, it's crazy to me, because through all of those things and then some, I don't remember a time being mad at God. I don't remember a time.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Questioning, I'm just thankful for that I'm alive. I was told, one of the things I was told as a kid is that you're probably not going to live past 20.
It was that with that diagnosis that they made that call?
That was with that diagnosis. And I just remember thinking, that's up to God. That's not, you can tell me that all you want, but I could be taken out tomorrow, or I could live till I'm 100. So
that's right.
That was just something I refused to accept, because I knew that, I just had that overwhelming sense that God had a plan far better than me.
Amen, brother.
Checking out at 20 years old.
And clearly he did. So is that kind of the same? I mean, has that diagnosis evolved over time? Because now, like with your daughters living with, are they getting that same kind of message? Because that's really hard to live with that kind of like hanging over your head.
No, and it's, again, it's one of those things as time's progressed. They've been able to identify more people with it, and there's treatments and things like that. But again, it's so different for each individual person, because it affects the brain, it affects the heart, and of course, it affects the kidneys. So
yeah,
one of the things that I'm very careful of is with medicine, which is a pain, because like I can't take ibuprofen because
so you're dealing with pain and you can't take pain meds.
Exactly. So, when I've had to have surgeries, stuff like that, again, it's one of those things you just have to go through it, because either one, I can't tolerate the medicine, or two, my kidneys can't process it properly. So even if I could tolerate it, it doesn't make sense to, but major organs in sense in jeopardy, just to relieve pain. So it was one of those things that, again, I was told that there were things I wasn't going to be able to do.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to go in the military, and I didn't pass the physicals for that, which hindsight now is probably good, because, at the time I would have entered the military would have been right at or right after 9/11. And so I wouldn't have been able to tolerate, working in that kind of environment anyway.
Yeah.
But then my dream for being a kid was to be in law enforcement. And, there's
same kind of deal, right? Physical wise, like, how did you get through that? Because I know eventually you got into law enforcement. So
that's another one of those bug guys.
Yeah.
I mean, truly, anybody that's ever wore a police uniform with the body armor and stuff like that, I mean, if it's hot outside, it's only hotter with all that on.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. I truly can't count the amount of times that I was on a car accident or calls or a standoff or something like that where it was hot outside, and I was just at that breaking point of like, I'm going to pass out because I'm not sweating and I'm overheating, and that situation resolved, and I was able to go get relief.
That's what I was going to say. So if you can't sweat, your body essentially can't cool itself, correct? I mean,
Right.
Is that so? And at the time when you first got into law enforcement, are you living in Kansas at that point? Because you weren't
So
in
my
Alaska
entire
until-
my entire law enforcement career was spent in Kansas.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So you're dealing with some hot summers there.
Hot summers, some cold winters,
All that
and again,
here. Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah. So, and I had a great career. I mean, I actually started out in the Department of Corrections at 19. So I tried going to college. College just didn't work. And you can't be a cop until you're 21. So I ended up getting involved in corrections. I was actually one of the youngest people ever hired at KDOC. So that kind of kicked off my law enforcement career. And basically I did that until I was able to apply, to be an actual cop. And I ended up working in my hometown, which is another one of those. That's something I highly do not recommend. It turned out great. I had a good career. I worked all the way from patrol up to chief of police of my hometown.
Oh, wow.
But as the famous Texas country song goes, you're always 17 in your hometown. So
That's right. That's right. They see you just as a kid. Yeah. What's the
some of that was difficult, because you were constantly reminded. I was a wild child.
Oh yeah, so they like to remind you that you're a party guy. Like, what are you doing as a cop? Come on, man, chief of police.
Yep, and the stuff that my dad did.
Yeah,
some of that came back too.
Sure. Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, like I said,
How did you get through the physical exam? Was there did they present an obstacle similar to the military? Like, was it like, hey, are you going to be able to?
So, here's another crazy thing. So like when you go to law enforcement, they do just like a basic physical, right? I mean, it's nothing in depth.
Yeah.
The other crazy thing was the state of Kansas. So Kansas, like all states, are governed by what they typically call a post, which is so Kansas was the Kansas Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training. They govern all the training, make all the requirements, stuff like that. For whatever reason, but God, the academy class before mine was the last one that had mandatory PT every day. So when I signed up for the police academy, the first I think it was 2 or 3 days I went in, you did your typical battery of tests. You did sit-ups, push-ups, mile and a half run, and then you would do that again at the end of the academy. As long as you showed improvement, even if it was a second faster in a mile run, one more push-up than what you did, then you passed that portion of it.
Yeah.
And I had to do PT every day in the heat, I probably wouldn't have passed.
Yeah. Wow.
But again,
the timing was just divine for that. Yeah. That's incredible. Very cool. So while you're in law enforcement, are you maintaining, because I don't know, first of all, thank you for your service. I admire people that fulfill that call. And I imagine that you get exposed to, especially, and then you get exposed to things in your own hometown too, which probably could be eye-opening at times. But does that challenge your faith at all? Like, are there any moments there that you wrestle with? Because again, it seems like you're the perfect guy for that job, number one, because you are so level and calm and at peace with your faith. But was there any experiences, anything unique that you encountered, in those 17 years that really kind of tested you a bit?
Yeah, I mean, that was, obviously that was where I first truly saw evil. And especially in a small town, people don't understand. You think the sidewalks get rolled up at night. I mean, we were a town of about 1,300 people. We had an authorized full-time of 4 officers, and a couple part-time slots, and in our sheriff's department only had 4 as well. So we had. I mean, I can truly say there was times that I questioned, what the heck am I doing here? And times that I had to go and literally wash myself in prayer and the word before I even went home, because, you're around true and pure evil. And, if people aren't familiar with the spiritual realm, it'll rock your world when you're put in some of those situations. I remember we had a barricaded subject in a house one time, and we finally ended up making access to the house, and we were looking all over. We could not find this guy. We finally found him in the bed, and I had dealt with the guy numerous times before. Knew him by name, knew him personally, and when he pulled the blankets down from his, from hiding underneath it, for a split second, it was a different face on him than what was his face.
Oh, wow.
And so you knew immediately, you're dealing with a demon. Of course, the other officer that was with me, we kind of look at each other like, did I just see what I thought I saw? And afterward, doing a debrief, it was like, holy cow, this is some bad stuff.
Wow.
And we had, we dealt with some cartel issues, and I mean, we had a string where we did numerous search warrants within our town and within our county. And we would go in these houses that would have shrines, devoted to Satan. And, the minute you even just step foot on that property, if you have the Holy Spirit, you feel it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a heaviness instantly, right?
Absolutely. And even just driving by, I mean, you feel that heaviness. So again, and I could tell that the times that I would not put myself in check afterwards and make sure that I spent some time in prayer and stuff before I went home, you could definitely tell, because you bring that stuff home with you.
Agitated, right? And almost just yeah. Wow. And I mean, guys, we got to be thankful for our law enforcement in this country. I mean, the stuff that these guys get exposed to, it's not just writing speeding tickets. Let's be real here. This is there's a lot of heavy stuff, and they got families that they go home to. I mean, Adam has children, and a lot of these guys do, and that's tough. I appreciate you sharing that piece of your story too, because I think it's really impactful, and I think a lot of people do lack an appreciation for the people that keep their communities safe and, go into those really dark corners of society. It's like, you could probably stroll down the streets of that, 1,300 person town and have no idea what's going on behind some of those closed doors. And,
that was probably one of my favorite parts about the job, though, is because especially in that size of a town, you can only, you have to get really creative on the routes you take around town to patrol, because there's only so many ways you can get around.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is, you go by those houses that you frequent, or you go by the place where there was, domestic violence or whatever. And the amount of time I got to spend in prayer just on patrol was for me, it was really cool. I mean, it was bad situations, but knowing that not only could I be there in that capacity to, to hold people accountable or be a resource or whatever, the behind the scenes, being able to constantly have that reminder every time you drive by, and have that nudge to pray.
Yeah.
That was really cool for me.
Absolutely. So outside of the career, so what's going on at this kind of stage of your life while you're in law enforcement? You met your wife, you revealed about 10 years ago that you got married. So was she in your life at this point while you're in law enforcement? Because you moved to Alaska together. I'm trying to remember what year that was.
2020.
2020. Yeah. So you guys are well established in your relationship in this part of your law enforcement career as well.
So I was previously married. You know, I started in law enforcement in 2002.
Okay.
And then so and for my previous marriage, I've got a couple girls, and I don't want to bring my kids too much into a lot of this, just to protect their privacy.
Yeah.
But essentially, after that marriage ended due to infidelity on behalf of my ex-wife, I met my current wife, and that was really I think for me was a good match, because she was a previous 911 dispatcher.
Oh wow!
In the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So
yeah,
she knew coming in the nuances of the job, and it had experienced a lot of trauma. Being on the other side. I mean, that's another thing. You want to talk about the true unsung heroes is the dispatchers on the other end. They never have any closure. They send us to these calls, and then they never get to hear how they turn out. They're the ones who have to be on the phone with a battered woman who's actively getting beaten by a domestic violence situation, or somebody who's just witnessed whatever horrific accident, or somebody commits. They're
ton of respect for those folks. Yeah. And we've got one inside of our community too with Mike, and that's gotta be one of the most difficult jobs. And I think you hit the nail on the head. They don't have closure, right? It's like they get confronted with like a really painful trauma, an event that is unfolding, and it's like, then they hand it off and they don't really know exactly what transpires. So it'd be hard to go home with that every day. So you meet your wife.
She's absolutely another bug god. I mean, I'll never say there's any savior other than Jesus, but he definitely used her. I mean, I was in a dark time when we met.
Well, tell me about that, because I don't see, again, I'm picturing you as this like calm, easy, level guy all the way through. So there's actually a dark time.
It was a dark time, personally, because
going through a divorce and everything.
Going through a divorce.
Yeah.
But I was even professionally, and a lot of that was, I had set a very prideful goal for myself. I mean, when I interviewed to be a police officer at the police department that I worked up through chief, when the chief that hired me asked me, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I had the call to look him in the face and say, sitting right where you are. So, and it actually ended up turning out to be the truth.
Yeah.
It was 6 years instead of 5.
Almost did it.
But, again, being a hometown boy.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty black and white kind of guy. I think most type A personalities are.
Yeah.
But I did things by the book. I did things with integrity and ethics and honesty. And I had a city council at the time that didn't feel the same way. And I was butting heads with them constantly on an ethical standpoint. And I was refusing to let go. I had so much pride that, I've made it here. I'm the chief of police. I'm going to die on this hill, and I'm going to beat this thing until I'm basically not going to let them win.
Yeah.
And at that point, I mean, I was rising in the ranks within state associations too. I was the district governor for our state peace officers association and our state chiefs association. So I was responsible for the entire western half of Kansas. So like 50 some odd counties out of 105. I was crazy. I was the representative, and I thought quite highly of myself because I was getting recognition. I was having daily conversations with legislators and lawmakers and chiefs in big towns. And
you're like in your early 30s, right? I mean, is that about the same?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've advanced pretty far in your career.
Yeah.
You know,
but it was, again, it was pride.
Yeah.
And I remember one time I went to a conference and I was getting everything ready, and my wife looked at me and she said, I know this is what, like, I know you enjoy doing this kind of stuff. And she said, just remember, you are getting prepared to go impress people that really don't even know you and probably don't even like you.
Mm.
And I took that as an ego hit. I was angry. I'm like, no, I don't think you understand. Like, I'm in this, I'm making things happen. And, she went to some of that training with me, and essentially, I really felt God using her to put me in check. Be like, you're not all that. Yes, you're a police chief, whatever, but you're a police chief in a town of 1,300. At the end of the day, you're a beat cop with a gold badge, and you're not any better than anybody else. And it was kind of at that point where I started to try to make a turn. I sat up on stage in front of all these cops at a huge conference, getting ready to make a speech as to why I should be the next sergeant at arms of this association, which would eventually propel me to the president of the association.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt a really strong conviction from God, be like, kind of telling me, you got to decide. You got to decide if me and your family is important, or if impressing all these people that if you lose this position tomorrow aren't going to be there, where do you want to be?
Yeah.
And I got up and walked out, and I just
really,
I'm going to be loyal to my family and God and the people I serve. And this stuff really isn't all that important. And sure enough, fast forward to 2018, I get let go by the very council that I had been fighting for years. And
oh my goodness.
She, my wife had developed relationships, even that she thought were strong.
Sure.
And the day that title left, we found out who
your friends were, right? Yeah.
Because the day that title left, the day that those that were friends of my wife, just because she was the chief's wife, turned their back and walked away. And I'll tell you what, the cool thing was, the people that I had taken to jail, people that I had taken their kids away with social services, people that I had daily negative dealings with, were the ones that came to my defense, showed up at city council meetings.
Is that right?
Wrote letters to the paper saying, what are you guys doing? Like, yes, we've had negative contacts, or he held us accountable, but he treated us right, and he did things the right way, and you're letting him go. So
isn't that kind of you built the resume of a true servant?
Yeah, and again, I don't say that to toot my own horn. I say that as an example of it pays off to treat people with
absolutely
like people,
it does,
with with dignity and respect, but to also know that position is just that, it's just position, and when that position goes, we only have God and people in our corner to count on. So,
amen. Yep.
So and maybe I guess I took that as the people that were important, that were truly important, stayed the ones that were important.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. And it was just maybe a season that was coming to a close. Like God needed to close that chapter in your life so that you could go out and write the next one, right? So,
oh gosh, it needed to have been closed long before that. That was the final kick. That was the kick in the pants that we're
stubborn, though, and we won't often close the door ourselves, even if we kind of have the very strong nudge and conviction that it has to be done. Sometimes it's hard for us, and God's like, all right, I'll take care of it for you. Here we go. I know I've forced my way from an employment perspective in the past, and it's never panned out all that well, but God's taken care of it in the end, and he's steered me back, on the road to wherever he's leading me next. And so maybe, because I would say, Adam, we're definitely going to have to do a part 2 on your testimony, because there's a whole lot left here, I know, and I'm excited about the second part. I think we're maybe 45 minutes or so in now, so it'd probably be a good breaking point, because transitioning out of law enforcement and then this next segment of your life and career and everything else with your family, like there's a whole lot of cool stuff coming, and get the story of how you get to Alaska from Kansas. Like, how does that happen? That'll be really exciting. And there's a lot of butt gods I know in that story as well. So let's plan to come back and do a part 2. That's okay with you. Yeah, this is going to be fun. I love this journey. It's very different, which is cool, because so many of the guys that I've interviewed have had very traumatic experiences that then steered them completely away from God. But he's been this calm, steady influence in your life, all the way through. This reassuring presence that is giving you peace and leading you, gently through all of these adversities that you encounter with, your health situation and just things that you encounter in law enforcement. And it's a really kind of beautiful picture that is quite different from a lot of the testimonies that I've have captured on this podcast. But I think it's really, really cool and very intriguing. So I can't wait to come back and do part 2 with you. So folks, thank you for joining us for part 1 of Adam's story. We will be back. This will probably be a Tuesday, Thursday, so you should be able to catch the second part of Adam's story here in just a couple of days. Thank you, Adam. We love you, and we'll be back on the Disciple Podcast soon. God bless.
See you next time.